Latin is an easy enough language to learn that you do not require instruction in English. The main book you will hear hyped and promoted on YouTube as the solution to all your problems and as the necessary first step in learning the language is this book and the series of books it's a part of. I would not be making this video today if I thought that was in any way adequate or good advice on how to start with Latin. I would say that this Lingua Latina series of books is absolutely terrible if you are considering it as your first book, your first step in learning the language, your level 1 course or your level 0 course. Yeah, I have the separate exercise book down here at the bottom of the pile. I actually have a couple of other volumes in the set. Now, if you have a brilliant, highly motivated teacher in the classroom who's working with you or a group of friends and you're all having fun together, I'm happy for you. That's great. But the credit goes to the teacher, not to the book. The book itself is terrible. And I suspect that a lot of the people who have kind of a positive impression of it already studied Latin when they were teenagers and are now returning to Latin. They're false beginners. It's not really their first step in learning the language, and they're finding a lot of fun as a way to review Latin, to learn Latin for the second time or maybe the third time, not as a first step. If you're starting with Latin, if you are truly a beginner, then the textbook I recommend is this one. And like Lingua Latina, it does not provide instruction in English. The philosophy behind the Lingua Latina series is that you don't require any modern language whatsoever. In this case, there is instruction, but the instruction is in French. Note that down here in the bottom right, it says sans peine. You will see this listed sometimes as Latin SP, indicating that it's part of that series of books. You can search around on Amazon or whatever website you use also for Assimil plus Latin and see what you get. It's not easy to find on the internet. It is not easy to find in the real world either. This comes with a robust set of audio CDs that can also be acquired as an MP3 download. But be careful. I would say that if you buy it as a secondhand book, you are probably not going to get the audio recordings at all. You are probably going to be left regretting that you didn't buy it new. You'll neither get a working MP3 download code nor a set of audio CDs if you do not pay full price for the real book with the real CDs that are also accompanied by the download code. Now, why am I praising this book? It's not only for the audio recordings, but the audio recordings are absolutely crucial. And to my knowledge, there are two versions of the audio recordings. There's sort of the current generation version, which is what I have. But if you Google around on the internet, it seems to me there was another version some decades ago. I'm not sure if they're completely identical, but with cruder, older, lower quality audio recordings. So I just say, it does seem to me there are two versions of this in circulation. If this costs you $50 with the audio recordings included, it's worth $50. If it costs you $100, it's worth $100. And that's the book I recommend as step 1, level 1. Now, it has competition. Latin via Ovid here, you will note, proposes itself as a first course. So too does Latin for Dummies. Now, they're both excellent. I mean, this is probably the most underrated book of the set because it's so unpretentious. But this one too, this comes out of Detroit, Michigan, guys. This is from the Michigonian School of Latin Education, and it is it is produced for a class of students who are not presumed to be geniuses and who are not presumed to be highly motivated. This is really meant for stupid, lazy students, but this does really rely on the classroom experience, or at least having a group of friends. I certainly, if you think you can get a copy of the audio recordings, I'd say good luck. There are audio recordings that are meant to accompany it. But I would just say both of these, there are very positive things to be said about both these books, but not as your very first step, not as your first course. For some reason, I mean, all the fans of Lingua Latina, they want to heap scorn on the series of books attached to Wheelock's name. And by the way, I mean, there were more books than that. Yeah, see, like this is yet another book attached to Wheelock. I think the reality is that Wheelock's Latin was developed with the assumption that you're learning in a classroom with a group of students. It's a good book. It's even a great book. It's just probably not the book you want to use if you're sitting alone with nothing but the internet to keep you company. Learning Latin the ancient way. This reflects a longstanding interest I have in many languages around the world. Ancient Pali, Sanskrit, pre-modern Chinese. Generally speaking, when I was working on Asian languages, the whole system of education was transformed the moment Christian missionaries arrived. Christian missionaries being part of the first wave of European colonial influence, European imperial domination. And the question became, well, how were any of these languages taught or learned before European influence arrived? So parallel to that interest, I mean, this is obviously within Europe, instead of looking at a language like Pali, Sanskrit, or Chinese, how did people learn the ancient languages in ancient times, or going back for as many centuries as we can, going back as far as we can, in terms of the extant evidence? That book answers that question. It's not genius. It's really not a work of genius, but to contextualize your own Latin learning experience, may be interesting, may be rewarding, may be useful for you, and worth mentioning in this video because unlike Lingua Latina here, it's not something everybody's heard of. The choice of dictionary, my endorsement goes to Lewis. This is Lewis alone, not Lewis in short, and that's for various reasons. It took quite a long time to narrate, including even the format and layout of the text. This is really intended as a learner's dictionary. This is for teacher and student. Obviously, more recent dictionaries will have advantages in terms of scholarly accuracy, in terms of incorporating more and more examples from more and more historical periods and so on. I am sure other dictionaries have other redeeming qualities, but I'm here just addressing my advice to someone who is starting to learn Latin for the first time. This is their first step in their first year. That is the dictionary I would recommend spending the money on. Obviously, more serious, detailed, technically accurate sources. Today, they'll all be computerized. So this is the question of what you're gonna have on paper for that tactile experience. And I mean, don't kid yourself, guys. Like, the legibility of the typeface matters. Like how enjoyable or how miserable the experience of looking a word up is in the book. That all matters too. So that's a wrap. I mean, the advice is really simple. I'm not telling you to take this book and burn it. I'm saying that could be your second step, your third step, or your fourth step when you're reviewing the language and kind of having fun with it. Many of these books, I mean, again, Wheelock's Latin, great book, great series of books, a lot of positive things to say about it. But for step one, starting from zero, that's the one to get, even if you do not understand a single word of French.